In this video, we're going to go over how to annotate using Adobe Reader software. So this will be useful for any readings that you have online that are in PDF form already. So you'd be downloading it already in a PDF form. If you're using a lab computer at the school library or your local library, you'll likely find that Adobe Reader is already installed on those computers. So this works well as a software that's available on most computers. It's also free to download on your own computer. So we're going to start by, I've opened up a document already here, a reading that would be for an online class. When you first open up the reading, you may find that this bar is collapsed in over here. If you aren't sure which each of these stand for, what you're trying to look for, you can mouse over them or you can click on this little gray bar and it will, oh, there we go. Normally, you will click on this gray bar and it will expand out and show you the list of options here. We're going to click on comment to start. Once you open up the comment bar, you'll see that this up here, this ribbon bar, popped up with a whole bunch of options. So I'm just going to go through some of the tools that you can use when you're annotating your reading. The first one is basically a sticky note. So you click on it and it's just going to give you this little dialog box. You can click, or a dialog bubble. You can drop this anywhere. What's nice about this is that it doesn't take up a lot of space on the page. So if you've got a really tight text already or like tight margins like this, we can click here and it's just going to show that there's a note here, and the notes are actually going to go over here. So if you had a question about the reading, you would put the actual question you had probably so you'd remember what it was, but you could put it over in there and just click post. Now it's going to be attached to it. So as you go through and add more, they'd be available, and if you clicked on them when it was closed, you can double click and it'll pop up over here as well. They can also be moved around if you think you may have dropped it in the wrong place. The next one is the highlighter. I can go ahead and select that tool, and then I could highlight whatever in the text I wanted to highlight. Now you'll see that it just shows the highlighting here, but if we reopened this comment box, you can see that highlighted text came up here. I could also double click on the highlight, and it's going to give me an area now to add a note just like you did with the sticky note, but this time it's, you know, the actual text is highlighted as well. So both of these, as you click, you can see I can swap between the two and it's going to highlight the one that you're looking at when you go to reread your readings later or look at it before a test or refresh your memory. Underlining works very similarly to the highlight. It just is going to, you know, underline it instead of highlighting. You can also change the properties on these by right-clicking and going to properties. So if I wanted to make this highlight, say I wanted some of the highlights to be a different color, I would have the option to select a color in here and click OK. It's going to default to whatever it's set at initially, so generally yellow. So if you wanted green to be your default, when you're in properties, you're going to want to click this Make Properties Default button, and then all of your highlights from then on would turn into green highlights. Okay, next, I'm going to skip a couple of these because they're not quite as useful for annotating for reading. But adding a text box, especially if you've got room to do so, can be really helpful because you can put your notes right in here. So here, notes. So you could add anything that you would normally write down with a pen and paper in the margin of your notes on a textbook or on a reading that you had on paper. You can add in with this text box here. And similarly, you can change the properties by going into properties. So if you wanted it to not be red or you wanted it to be the box to be a different color, you could change all of that there. And then finally, and this is more useful when you've got things like tables or something that you want to draw attention to, which this reading does not have. But there is this section here where you can add in lines, arrows, shapes. So if you had some sort of a table that you were trying to draw attention to a section of it, you could draw a box in there. And just like everything else, you have the ability to add in additional notes about why you may have, made that box over that section, so that you don't forget later what you were thinking, and you can kind of keep track of your notes. So that's the basics. And then when you go ahead and you save your PDF on your computer, or if you were on a lab computer on a thumb drive, or you save it in Google Drive or email it to yourself, once it's saved, these notes are now going to stay with your PDF. So if you reopen this PDF, you'll have the notes available to you just as you left them. Okay, so that's it, and hopefully that will help you use Adobe Acrobat or Adobe Acrobat Reader to mark up any text that you may have in PDF form.